Shooting last night in Charleston, South Carolina at Emanuel AME Church. It's a historic black church in South Carolina, and it was done by a guy named Dylann Roof. He appears to be some sort of right-wing racist that targeted black people in this country, and obviously in that particular church. He killed 9 people, 6 women, and 3 men. Some people in this country are claiming they're not entirely sure that he's racist. We'll show you otherwise in a second. He probably just picked a black church at random, right? And then there is Sylvia Johnson's account. Apparently this is what Dylann Roof said as he was shooting people. I had to do it. You rape our women and you're taking over our country and you have to go. He killed 6 women, as I told you. He killed 6 women and 3 men at a church, and it's because apparently they were taking over the country. Where might he have heard that black people are taking over the country? Okay, he said the local sheriff there, Charleston Police Chief Greg Mullen, says, I do believe this is a hate crime. It will be investigated as a hate crime. Seems fairly obvious, but not if you turn on Fox News. Okay, here's a picture of the shooter, Dylann Roof, this obvious maniac, and those flags on that jacket are going to be very relevant in a second. What's also relevant is what some of the accounts of what Dylann Roof believed, including a former classmate of his, John Mullins. The former classmate told the Daily Beast that he didn't think that Roof was a racist so much. Oh, really? Interesting. As a conservative with a lot of Southern pride. He made a lot of racist jokes, but you don't really take them seriously like that. You don't really think of it like that. No, John, you don't think of it like that. But that's why we tell you, hey, you know what? Be a little bit careful. Maybe racist jokes actually do mean something. It's not to say that anybody who makes a racist joke is going to go shoot up a black church. Of course not, right? But if you got a guy who's got guns, who likes to wear, racist paraphernalia around, we'll show you more about that in a second, and goes around making racist jokes and talking about a Southern pride. What do you think he meant by Southern pride? He loves grits? Some people do. Some people have Southern pride. They love the grits. They love the other parts of the South. I've been all over the South. There's a lot I love about the South. But I don't go around wearing Confederate flags going, Southern pride, remember the good old days. Yeah, let's make some racist jokes. But everybody's shocked. I don't know, we all make them, and then all of a sudden one of us decided to kill 9 of them. Okay, well, those black people killed, but no, it's got nothing to do with race. I'm sure of it. Again, we'll get to people who are actually claiming that in a second. So let me show you the shooting victims first. Cynthia Hurd, 54 years old. Susie Jackson, 87 years old. Ethel Lance, 70 years old. Reverend DePayne Middleton, doctor, he's 49 years old. The Honorable Reverend Clementa Pinckney, who is actually also in the South Carolina legislature. He was the pastor of the church. He has passed away as well. Tawanza Sanders, 26 years old. Reverend Daniel Simmons Sr., 74 years old. Reverend Sharonda Singleton, 45 years old. Mira Thompson, 59 years old. And the picture of Reverend Clementa Pinckney is now all over the web. You might have already seen it. He was 41 years old. He had 2 kids. And he was a leader in his community, and now he has passed away. Now, my reaction to it is severalfold. Outraged by it. There's a lot of mentally ill people in the country, but we give everybody a gun in the country. Everybody have at it. He was given a gun as a birthday present. That worked out well. If you think somebody might be mentally disturbed, don't give them a gun. If you think somebody might be part of a hate group, don't give them a gun. Don't give them a gun. Okay. So is it racial? It was. I can't believe we had a conversation about this, but we're having it. Okay. Of course it's racial. Okay. So let's go to Fox News on that, and then I will fill in the details of the shooter and give you a sense of what he's actually about. Here's E.W. Jackson on Fox News from this morning.
We're urging people, wait for the facts, don't jump to conclusions. But I have to tell you, I am deeply concerned that this gunman chose to go into a church, because there does seem to be a rising hostility against Christians across this country because of our biblical views. And I just think it's something that we have to be aware of and not create an atmosphere in which people take out their violent intentions against Christians.
It was released earlier, and extraordinarily, they called it a hate crime. And some look at it as, well, it's because it was a white guy, apparently, and a black church. But you made a great point just a moment ago about the hostility toward Christians. And it was a church, so maybe that's what they're talking about. They haven't explained it to us.
Well, yeah, I don't know whether most people jump to conclusions about race. I long for the day when we stop doing that in our country. But we don't know why he went into a church. But he didn't choose a bar. He didn't choose a basketball court. He chose a church. And we need to be looking at that very closely.
The Fox News host there said, extraordinarily, they called this a hate crime. It was extraordinary to call this a hate crime? Like, that surprised you. Like, oh, a white guy goes in. By the way, he sat in church for an hour. He looked at these people. He watched them for an hour before he mowed them down. Some witnesses say he reloaded 5 times as he was murdering these people. It's extraordinary that some people called it a hate crime in the beginning. It's extraordinary. And then they bring in their black expert, because he's black. E.W. Jackson's black, so it's okay. So, and that house feels awfully good at EW, doesn't it? So he comes in and he says, oh, no, it's probably about religion, man. Probably about religion. I mean, let's not jump to conclusions about this Dylann Roof guy. By the way, one of the articles has Root, but his name is Dylann Roof. Okay? No, don't jump to conclusions. What are we jumping to conclusions for? Let's find out about Dylann Roof here. By the way, no, you know what? Here, I'll give you more conservatives. It's not just Fox News. It's not just this idiot E.W. Jackson. Let's go to Lindsey Graham. He was on The View. Listen to him.
But one thing it's not, let's talk about what it's not in my view. It's not a wind into the soul of South Carolina. No. It's not who we are. It's not who our country is. It's about this guy. And this guy's got tons of problems. And to kill people in a church after sitting there with them for an hour, tells you how whacked out this kid is. You know, I can't explain this. I don't know what would make a young man at 21 get so sick and twisted to kill 9 people in a church. This is beyond my understanding.
Do you think that it's a hate crime? Do you feel like it's a hate crime, or do you think it's more mentally disturbed?
Probably both. One probably precludes the other. There are real people out there who are organized to kill people in religion and based on race. This guy's just whacked out.
Oh, this guy's just whacked out. You know, it's a lone wolf. There are people organized who try to kill people. There's more right-wing terrorism in this country than there is, for example, Muslim terrorism. Lindsey Graham doesn't talk much about that. The only people who are organized, of course, are Muslims. When a right-winger does it, no, it's unorganized. He's a lone wolf. He's just probably crazy. And Lindsey Graham went on to say in that interview that, look, people are looking to attack religion. Yeah, you think it was about a religion. And it could have been a white church, could have been an Asian church. He just happened to walk into a black church. Yeah, maybe. And here Santorum's going to take up that bullshit line of defense as well. Watch this.
You know, you just can't think that things like this could happen in America. I mean, that's obviously a crime of hate. I mean, I don't know that we don't know the rationale, but I don't know what other rationale could there be. I mean, you're sort of lost that someone would walk into a Bible study at a church and indiscriminately kill people. Pray for those and pray for our country. I mean, this is one of these situations where you just have to take a step back and say, you talk about the importance of prayer at this time, but we're now seeing assaults on religious liberty that we've never seen before.
No, it's not about race. It's an assault on religious liberty. Do you have any idea this guy's against religion? No, nothing, right? Nothing. You have no evidence to that effect. Oh, it's an assault on religious liberty. We're right. Why are you so defensive about it? Why? Lindsey Graham talking about, this is not the soul of South Carolina. Nobody talked about after Sandy Hook, is it the soul of Connecticut? Because obviously it had nothing to do with Connecticut. But there are 19 hate groups in South Carolina, a very strong part of what happens, unfortunately, in South Carolina. Does it affect everybody in South Carolina? Of course not, right? The people killed were in South Carolina. But is it a problem in South Carolina? Yes. Is it a problem with Dylann Roof? Yes. Let me show you. So here he is sitting on a car, and on that car, there's a license plate. That license plate talks about the Confederacy and refers to racist group. And so is it a coincidence that he happens to be sitting on the roof of a car that has this racist license plate? Probably coincidence. Mark Pitcavage is the director of investigative research for the Anti-Defamation League, and he explained the jacket that we showed you earlier that he was wearing. He said the two patches on a jacket Roof was wearing in the only public photo on the Facebook page are the symbols of the white supremacist movement. One patch is the flag of South Africa's apartheid government, while the other is the flag of the former white-controlled country of Rhodesia, which later became Zimbabwe, Pitcavage said. I wonder if it had to do with race. A guy who wore a jacket celebrating two racist countries. Of course it's about race. These Republicans are unbearable. Why are you defensive about it? If you're not racist, why are you defensive about it? Why don't you just come out and say, well, look, obviously it had to do with race. Why don't you say that? What are you trying to cover up? All right, I want to go back to John Mullins. That's the guy. I'm going to read it to you again, okay? John Mullins said that this is the former the former fellow student of Dylann Roof. John Mullins said that Roof was kind of wild, commenting that he heavily used Xanax and other pill drugs. Mullins also said that Roof had a reputation for spouting Southern pride messages and conservative stances on several issues, but said that his statements, along with several racist jokes, were always brushed off on the assumption that Roof was joking. Yeah, well, maybe we shouldn't make that assumption. And so, look, is this guy disturbed? Of course he's disturbed. Of course he is. My point isn't that this guy is part of a coordinated movement, that he worked with other racist groups, etc. But everybody who does a shooting is disturbed to some degree, right? So why do we classify them in two different directions? Okay. Speaking of which, I mean, this unbearable, horrible racist group then goes on to the pastor's Facebook page and leaves this note. Maybe one of my supporters, this is from Pioneer Little Europe, the racist group, maybe one of my supporters in South Carolina can run for your seat. The pastor was, remember, a legislator in South Carolina. You don't need it anymore. Now, if it was a Muslim who did that shooting and then ISIS put out a statement like that, what would happen? Everybody would say, oh, you see, coordinated. Coordinated, obviously. See, it's ISIS, it's these guys, they're all doing it together. They all work together. It's all part of an international thing. Now, all these different racist groups, they attack, kill. And other guys laugh about it. They go and insult the dead, and they do it, so brazenly. No, it's lone wolf. And it has nothing to do with race. It has nothing to do with anything, probably just about religion. Okay. So let's talk about the hate groups in South Carolina. They only have two factions of the Ku Klux Klan, 4 white nationalist groups, 6 neo-Confederate groups, 2 branches of the League of the South, and the Council of Conservative Citizens. But nothing to do with the soul of South Carolina. South Carolina's state flag has the Confederate flag within it. The Confederate flag is still flying, I should say, in the state capital of South Carolina. Still flying, the Confederate flag. Okay. But no, it has nothing to do with South Carolina. It has nothing to do with race, right? This is what we're doing. Why are they so defensive? Because they know it has to do with race. They know that this is part of the culture that has done this. You don't think there's been black church bombings before? You don't think there's been attacks on black churches before? This country has an enormous history of attacking black people in their churches. I'll get to that in a second. So what did the Council of Conservative Citizens say about black people? They say that they are the most privileged members of their race, the blacks are, okay? Do they look privileged today? I mean, how many times have you heard conservatives say, the black people have it all so good in this country. It's such a big advantage to be black in this country. That's why Dolezal pretend to be black. So what a wonderful advantage it is to be black in this country. Okay, here's another one from Kylie Rogers' Council of Conservative Citizens. That blacks benefit greatly from the generosity of American whites, as they always have. Yeah. Yes, the generosity of American whites, especially people in racist groups like that, so generous with blacks. Okay, now let me tell you about that history so you understand, so you get a little context as to what's happening here. This is not isolated. This is, if you want to talk about coordinated, if you want to talk about a campaign of terror, this is a campaign of terror that has lasted hundreds of years in this country. So, Vox had a great explanation of this. They say attacks on black churches have been historically deployed by white supremacists to terrorize black communities and impose racist laws and policies on African Americans. These types of attacks, not just on churches, but on homes as well, were so common in Birmingham, Alabama during the 1950s and 60s that the city received the nickname Bommingham. Now, a lot of you might know about that bombing in Birmingham that killed those 4 young black girls, injured dozens more. But did you know that that was just one of 4 bombings within 4 weeks? Who does bombings of innocent people? Oh, right, terrorists, right? Terrorists do that, right? Okay, and it's not like that was in the 1850s and 1860s, it was 1950s and 60s. Okay, historically, black churches are not just houses of worship, so why do they target them? They have also acted as sanctuaries from racism and organizational hubs for civil rights rallies. Many of the civil rights leaders of the past few decades have even come from churches, including Reverend Martin Luther King Jr. White supremacists throughout American history often saw these churches as threats, making them prime targets for those who wanted to terrorize and maintain control of black communities and enforce slavery and segregation. Well, you got black people congregating somewhere. First of all, that's a danger. Second of all, it's an easy target. You hit them where they are, right? That's why white supremacists and racists have been hitting black churches for, unfortunately, a long, long time in this country. So this church has been around it's one of the oldest black churches in America, around for a long time. There was actually a slave rebellion that emanated from this church, and that was obviously back in the 1820s, okay? Fascinating little fact, white people were so scared of what happened there. Of course, they hung 35 people, including the leader of that rebellion, who was one of the founders of the church. But they were so scared of what happened there, they burned the church down. I'll tell you more about that in a sec. And then they built up a little ammo and weapon cache around the corner in a building. That building later grew and grew and became a military training area in the South. It later became the Citadel. That's one of the top military academies in the country. And it started with an effort to make sure if there was another slave rebellion, that they would be around to murder all the blacks that came out of this church that was attacked yesterday. Amazing history. Know your history. Understand the context of what's happening here. Easy to call it a lone wolf, easy to say, oh, it's Xanax, it's drugs, it's whatever. But this has been happening for a long time in this country, unabated. I'll get to the recent history in a second as well. So in that attack, that rebellion that came out of this church, white leaders blamed the attack on the Emanuel AME Church, saying it helped foster the attacks. They instituted harsh laws against black churches, including a ban on all black services. The congregation was then dispersed and the church was burned. The congregation would continue to meet in secret. The man who led that rebellion, by the way, they wouldn't put up his statue in Charleston for about 200 years. I'm sorry, I should say well over 100 years, okay? It just went up in 2014, finally, okay? They burned the church to the ground. It's not the first time this church has been attacked, let alone church after church in the South that were all black. They weren't attacked because they were churches. They were attacked because there was a lot of black people inside them. That's reality. That's reality. That's our history. That history rains down on us through the generations. And you think it's ancient? Oh, well, that's 50 years ago. Okay. More from the Atlantic here in Vox. These types of attacks continued through the 19th and 20th centuries, including a wave of fire bombings of black churches in the South in the 1990s and the burning of a black church in Massachusetts the day President Barack Obama was inaugurated. Was it racial? Of course it was racial. Did he target them because they're black? Did he target them because some cultures within America today blame black people for everything, including what this insane person had in their mind about how they're taking over the country? Yeah, I've heard that in places. Yes, it was right-wing places. Yes, It was conservative places. That's why the Fox News and the Republicans today are so defensive. No. It wasn't probably not race. It was probably religious. It was probably something else. Look away, look away, look away. Well, we're not looking away. It is the reality, and that is why it happened.